Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. We've got some small gang has gotten together here, and we're going to join them for just a bit. It is James, Kirk, and Rucka. And we're going to listen to what they say right here. Sorry, I didn't have all that arranged. There we are.
So it's that is why Rand focused so much on Kant.
All right. Subject is Immanuel Kant. Now Rucka has the question, which we'll address.
Explain how Kant brought us to groupthink.
We explain how Immanuel Kant brought us to groupthink. He's irrational, sure, but why collective? Why groupthink?
Because since the individual can't, the individual cannot independently observe reality, then our reference point could be what you and I both see or what we both think or something.
I think it's something like that. I'm not sure though. Yeah, why is it? I think it has something to do with the fact that reason is inherently individualistic, and if you reject it, you have to go with something else. I don't know if I have a clean way of saying why.
He's got it. And so the root that he's looking for there is that when you reject reason, you've only got a lot of different flavors of non-reason. So reason is a pretty strict path, and then that's called science. And then non-reason is virtually everything else. So that's why you've got so many different flavors of collectivism and statism, and yet at the end of the day, you get to the end of it and you say, oh my gosh, this is just a soup of irrationality. How did it look like something besides a soup of irrationality? Well, because you thought that altruism and irrationality could be a system of some kind. The thing is, if you have a rational system and you make a mistake, you have means to correct it. If you're operating on principle and you misapply your principle, you just go back and check your principle. Or check your premises, as Ayn Rand said. But if you have no principles, no premises, then you just stumble from one disaster to the next and you never know what's going on. That is why they all appear to be irrational and incompetent and ineffective at the end of the day. Any non-rational philosophy is going to be ineffective at the end of the day. Now, why does Immanuel Kant fall into groupthink or collectivism? Because you must have some knowledge about how to operate in reality. Now, notice that it didn't immediately fall from Immanuel Kant right into the group racism we have today, the insane leftist culturism. It didn't immediately fall into that. It did go through a hippie stage where everybody just disconnected everything in a groovy sort of way. But then along came the Marxists and they said, well, there's no real reality. But your reality is built by your class, by how society reacts to your gender or your race or the amount of wealth your father has, right? Your reality is built by this. But there's no real reality, right? There's just your reality and his reality, and that's what Karl Marx offers. So you don't instantly fall from Immanuel Kant right into group racism. But it's only one step, because Immanuel Kant never developed his politics as being surrounded by the Enlightenment, as Leonard Peikoff says. Now he mentions Leonard Peikoff, and he says he can't remember where exactly, or he mentions somebody saying something on these lines, and he can't remember where it is, and I think that he's thinking about Peikoff, where Peikoff says, if you can't know reality, then it's my feelings or somebody else's feelings. And so then if you don't have any self-confidence, and of course you don't have any self-confidence because you've given up your mind, then it's somebody else's feelings. So how do you interpret somebody else's feelings? But it's all feelings. So From the point that Kant wins, from there forward, it's feelings. And since you aren't competent and you don't have access to reality yourself, therefore, go to an authority. It's the default. Not for everybody. There are mystics. There are Kantian mystics who just sit and babble by themselves and don't accept an authority. Right? You can have Kantian skeptics who just knock down and question everything. So not all of it turns into groupthink necessarily, but the thing is, it's very easy to turn to groupthink through the one-step movement in Marxism. So groupthink's very easy to develop. It's just an ethical way of practicing Kantianism, or a political way. Ethics and politics are virtually the same when you go to the political level. Ethics and politics imply each other very frequently.
Kant led to collectivism.
I think I heard Peikoff saying this in one of his lectures, or maybe I read it in one or more of his books. There was some sort of maybe I heard someone else say this, but I just remember hearing about how Kant's reasoning leads to groupthink, which is why today one of the reasons we have all these groups, that we break off into groups. I can't remember the way. But
not only groupthink, but also rabid individualistic skepticism. And Dewey was Kantian, and he was sort of individualism for the sake of individualism, right? But what kind of individualism? Just it's not think for yourself, it's don't think, but have your own flavor of not thinking. Everybody have their own flavor of not thinking. That's individualism for Dewey, but not to think for yourself. So he's just a flavor of Kant. So you get all kinds of things in Kant. You don't just get individualism, wild individualism like Dewey, and you don't just get collectivism like Marx. There are different flavors, and one of them is to choose something and integrate tightly around it, whatever it is, your feeling for your race, or your feeling for your country, or your feeling for whatever, your religion, to integrate tightly around that. And the other is to have no feeling for anything and not integrate anything and just be indifferent to everything and question everything and knock everything down and be a nihilist, right? So you say, why does Kant lead to groupthink? Well, what about the total nihilists who won't even accept a group and they're just against everything? I mean, the people who, when they get together with their group, fight with their group, like the feminists, when all the feminists get together and attack each other, they don't have a group. There's no groupthink there. It's attacking. It's rabid civil war. So why does Kant lead to rabid civil war and no group? Why can't you get a group together under Immanuel Kant's ideas? Why does it always fall apart? Because even there, everybody says everything here is arbitrary. Even there, it's only feelings. Even once you get your group together, once you get your social justice warrior group together, your Antifa warrior group together, even there you're going to be confused about what's going on. Because you don't have any principle. You can't refer to a principle. So, why does Immanuel Kant lead to collective thinking? Why does he lead to rabid individualist, nihilistic skepticism, though? Which is not collective thinking, it's the rejection of any principle at all. So, and that quickly deteriorates into needing some principle, and then they go M2. But still, the point is, Kant, as an epistemology, can be used a lot of different ways. And he can be used to blow things apart or to build bizarro things based on your own feelings. But, essentially, an objectivist would regard Kant's system as a fancy, irrational system. It's a system, and it's fancy, but ultimately it's irrational. It's just made up, period, full stop. It's just made up. So it's irrational. It's a fantasy. It's like going and reading The Hobbit and then analyzing it and analyzing it and analyzing it and analyzing it and analyzing it. That's not going to get you anywhere. You're just looking at stuff that's made up. So once you start with made up garbage, it can lead to groupthink. And one of the reasons that you end up with groupthink is because that's one of the flavors that were given to us by the political philosophers that followed Kant. Immanuel Kant himself never developed his politics surrounded by the Enlightenment like he was. I think he was tempted to. And that's why I believe he was really, really a pretty bad guy, because I can so easily imagine him writing sentences that venture into politics just for examples and stuff. But then he just could not publish those because he was surrounded by these people who believed in freedom of speech and freedom of thought and rationality and science. So he couldn't imagine being surrounded by people who are quasi-objectivists. It's just that the flavor in the air is quasi-objectivism. You really wouldn't fit in too well. You would have to write in a very fancy style to get away with what you're saying. And even then, people would call you the destroyer, the chief destroyer and stuff, and you wouldn't get away with it. So the only thing is he was so fancy that he couldn't be caught. He teases people in his writing. He goes along and he says, now, if you're sophisticated, you'll keep on going with me and keep considering what I say. The common people are not interested in what we're saying. So he keeps baiting his audience. That's one way that he got away with it. All right, without going further on this is a tidy video on one subject. It's why did Immanuel Kant lead to collectivism? I'm going to draw a line here, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Please go to Patreon and throw me $5 or $10 a month and help me build up a stream of revenue so that I can do these videos without feeling guilty about the time that I'm wasting just being some YouTuber e-bagger. So if you think I'm creating value and you like what I'm doing, please support me in it. Thank you, Mr. Cropper out.